Hello from Topeka. I'm Marley Carpenter, your KSCPA lobbyist. Last week was the last full week for non-exempt committees to complete their work for the first half of the legislative session. This Tuesday marks the official last day for committees to meet. Starting Wednesday, legislators will be on the floor working towards the turnaround deadline, which is this Friday, February 23rd. All non-exempt bills that haven't passed their House of Origin by turnaround are dead for the year. Lawmakers will then have a 4-day weekend and return to the second half of the legislative session, which starts Wednesday, February 28th. The clock is ticking on the veto override. Kansas law gives legislators 30 days to attempt a veto override, which falls on February 25th. This means that the House must have the votes to override the governor's veto on the tax bill before going home for turnaround break. The Senate will then have 30 days after the House votes to take it up in their chamber. While votes are tight to override the governor, the House is expected to pass the override with 2/3 majority. The Senate, however, remains gridlocked with 1 or 2 votes short of the necessary 27 votes. The Senate Assessment and Taxation Committee heard 2 controversial property tax bills. Last Tuesday, a hearing was held on Senate Bill 332, which would provide $50 million of annual state appropriations for the local ad valorem tax relief fund for returning it to local communities to help offset residential taxpayers in the form of rebates. The legislature did discontinue the LAVTR in 2003 when lawmakers decided that local governments were not using these dollars for the intended purposes of lowering taxes. There have been several bills introduced this session to refund this program. The Senate Tax Committee also held a hearing on Senate Bill 468 that prohibited cities and counties from exceeding their revenue neutral tax rate if they did grant economic development tax incentives or TIFs. Local governments came out in strong opposition to the bill, citing that it would remove local control and offering tax incentives to spur economic development in their communities. The House did work the unemployment insurance reform bill. House Bill 2570 passed out last Thursday and will now go to the full House for consideration. Amendments adopted included a long sought after change that would allow bus drivers to access benefits in the off season. The underlying bill cuts balanced employers' taxes by 50% in 2025, raises the wage base by 50%, and forgives 100% of negative balanced employers so that all employers move to a positive balance beginning in tax year 2026. On the tax front, the SALT parity bill will be heard on Monday in the Senate Tax Committee. House Bill 2465 is a cleanup of the 2022 legislation and will help KDOR with the interpretation of the act. House Bill 2798 is a Kansas Chamber single factor corporate tax apportionment bill. KDOR's version of the single factor apportionment bill is 2796 and contains market-based sourcing provisions as well. Both of these bills are expected to be heard after turnaround. House Bill 2420 is the remote workforce bill and was heard last week in the Tax Committee. There are no opponents during the hearing, but it is uncertain as to whether the bill will be worked or not. A final tax bill that has moved is Senate Bill 127, and that bill has been amended by the House Tax Committee to contain several of the non-controversial items that were contained in Senate Bill 8 that the governor vetoed last session. Senate Bill 127 includes 4 provisions, including a telecommunications sales tax exemption for machinery and equipment. This week, all non-exempt committees must complete their work by Tuesday, and both the House and Senate will spend the remainder of the week on the floor. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact myself or Danielle at the KSCPA office. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.